Okay, on the podcast, it's time for my political panel, Stu Nash and Ashley Church. We'll look at the latest poll, which sends National into opposition after just one term, and Labour, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori would govern if an election was held this week. And Chris Luxon is neck and neck with Chris Hipkins as preferred Prime Minister. Luxon has never been popular, so if Luxon can't get National a second term, should they roll him? I'll ask my panel. Well,
are we paying these people to front up, or are we paying them to fly to Wellington to eat their lunch? Should you really lose your career for refusing to take part in a 90-minute lesson about Māori culture? This government doesn't actually have any idea how to get economic growth. Show us what you made of, Prime Minister.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan, Garner.
Okay, you're with the Editor-in-Chief. Good evening, everyone. I'm Duncan, Garner. Welcome along, and please subscribe. Helps us stay around. Tell your friends. Let's get it up to 30,000. I think we're close to 30,000. I think we're something 29 point something. So let's hit 30,000 by the weekend. And I'll do some press-ups or something. All right, it's a poll that's rocked National. The Talbot Mills political poll, National slumped to 32%. Not enough, and they would be a one-term government. Luxon would be a one-term loser as Prime Minister, and Labour would be back in office. It's incredible, isn't it? On 35%, Labour would be 35%. That's what they are in the poll. Add in the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, and there'd be a change of government. The economy's ropey. It's hard to find work. 2,000 people applied for a New World job just recently. 2,000 people, one job. And unemployment continues to rise. Co-governance is back in the regions. It never went away, despite National saying they'd deal to it. Never did. So people have sent Luxon a message in this poll. Good night. It's over. You're out. Is it just a meaningless protest vote that doesn't really count? Or is there something more serious behind this poll? Crucially, the voters' sentiment is grumpy towards National, and the direction of the country is not good, they say, and the state of the economy is poor. 51% said they believe the country was on the wrong track, 76% saying the economy was not so good or poor, while 37% expected things to worsen. God, could it worsen? Only 23% of those polled said the economy was in good or excellent shape. The government's performance was judged harshly by poll respondents, only 38% believing they deserved a second term. On the other hand, 48% said it was time for another party to govern. So we'll look at this tonight with Stu Nash and Ashley Church and ask, should they roll Luxon? If he's like this in a year's time, they may have to. It's rare to unseat a sitting Prime Minister, but he just doesn't trigger good vibes, does he, from the voting New Zealand public? And he struggled to be popular. So let's be honest, Labour, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori have done nothing, in my view, to show us that they could step up. Yet voters are picking them in this poll. It leaves National with an awful dilemma. Ashley Church and Stu Nash with me now. Gents, g'day, nice to see you. Welcome.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, good to get you got the Hawke's Bay Mafia back together again, Dunk.
I have, yeah, I know. Very popular too. I might kick off with you, Ashley. Talbot Mills poll, change of government. If there was an election held this week, change of government, Labour, Greens and Te Pāti Māori, unbelievably, would have 63 seats and they'd govern.
Yeah, so there's a concept within polling science called statistical significance. And basically what it says is, get rid of all the jargon, basically what it says is that in any cohort of more than about 500 people, that the result that you get will be, within a margin of error, a relatively accurate assessment of what would actually happen if there was an election. So that 500 can represent 50,000, 500,000 or 5 million. And I've bought into that for a long time. And when you look at what's happened with the aggregated polls over the last sort of 10 or 15 years, you can kind of see that. So the reason I'm raising that is when you see what's happened with the last couple of quite recent polls, the Taxpayers Union poll and the Freshwater Strategy poll, both of which showed that the coalition would be continuing to be in a position to govern. And then you see this as what I would regard as an outlier. You have to kind of question whether this one on its own, and that's an important distinction here, whether this one on its own is accurate. Now, I'm not suggesting for a moment that there's been any sort of skullduggery taking place. What I am suggesting is there may have been some unconscious bias, and we're not really going to see whether this is a clear indication until we get a succession of polls either showing that this is a consistent trend in other polls over the next little while, or that it was an outlier and that the other polls revert back to what we've seen over the last little while. So currently, not particularly concerned as a good right winger, but let's see what happens over the next little while.
Yes, Stu, there's a margin of error always in these things of plus or minus 3%. So it could be that it's entirely wrong, but it's a snapshot in time, and it's a credible polling agency, and it's been around a long time.
Yeah, highly credible agency, but they're asking the wrong question. And I talked to David Farrar about this. I said, what these polling companies do, they say, if there was an election held tomorrow, who would you vote for? So, you give whatever party you'd vote for. I said to David, what you should do a poll and said if there was an election held tomorrow and there's a choice between Labour, the Greens, Te Pāti Māori, or National Act New Zealand First, who would you vote for? And I think you would see quite a significant difference. I mean, you know my views on this. I'm a former Labour cabinet minister, but I've made it very, very clear. If Labour has anything to do with Te Pāti Māori, then I'm not going to vote for them. Yeah. I think they are destructive. I think they are divisive. And I don't want a government where Te Pāti Māori has a seat around the cabinet table, or even the possibility of a seat around the cabinet table. And I think the Greens are economic victims. So if you give people the choice of what a government might look like, as opposed to just ask them who they would vote for, then I think you'll see some of the past voting behaviour sort of go, okay. So, and keeping in mind, people don't start thinking about these sorts of permutations until we're maybe 1, 2, 3 months out from an election. So it is a snapshot in time, but I don't think it reflects reality if there actually was an election.
I think that's
I wonder actually if it's because you can vote in this, and it has no impact at all. You're not changing the government at all. People know that, so it's a protest vote. Also, I look at it like Stu does. I look at this and think, how the hell can Labour, the Greens and the Māori Party be anywhere near government? Because look at the year the Greens and Te Pāti Māori have had. So I lump them in because you have to under MMP.
Well, I'm not sure. I actually agree with Stu on this. I think this is a reflection of people's real opinions right now, but it's because they're not thinking of those two other coalition partners. They're simply answering the question that was asked, and the question that was asked indicates whether or not the other guys should have a go. Stu's right. As you get closer to the election, and people have to start thinking about what an entire coalition would look like, that will start having an impact on what they may or might do when it comes to getting to the polling booth. But let's be really clear. Let's be really honest on this. National have done themselves no favour in this space over the last 18 or so months. National, in my view, have moved progressively, either deliberately or surreptitiously, have moved to the left. And you can see the result of that in things like, real good example in the last 24 hours was the decision to instruct Sport New Zealand to change, to basically get rid of its policy around trans athletes. And you looked at the statements that came from Mitchell and the previous statements from Bishop, and it was really clear that they were being dragged to that position. That's not a position that they would normally have taken. They were being dragged to it by New Zealand First as part of the coalition agreement. So when you look at results like this, what we're seeing is people saying, we're not happy with where National's going. And the one thing that's actually working in their favour at the moment, ironically, is Winston Peters, who's actually keeping them, I think, probably moving further to the left than they might otherwise have moved.
Yeah, but actually the other thing I would say, and Dunk, you've been involved in politics at a very active level for a very long time. And I've been on about this for a long time. I just think there is an incompetence, and I will go so far as to say incompetence on the ninth floor of the Beehive.
Yeah, I agree.
It's like this under Heather Simpson or Wayne Eagleson, even under Jacinda Ardern and Grant Robinson sort of management of that office. We're seeing Luxon, who is hapless, and I don't know if it's the man himself or the advice he's getting. Some people tell me he doesn't take advice, other people say he does, but he's getting really bad advice. But, again, this is the first elected Prime Minister this century who is dragging his party down. Now, if you think of Helen was always more popular than Labour until the end. John Key was always more popular until National until the end, and Jacinda was more popular than Labour until the end. Luxon is actually less popular than National, so he's dragging National down, whereas leaders in the past have dragged their parties up. And the thing is, I've also seen some polling where they said if Luxon was hit by a bus tomorrow, who would you vote for? Not even the Nats have a clear winner. If Nicola or Erica or Bishop or someone was sitting at 64 and everyone else was down at 8, then I think Luxon would be in trouble. But the fact that the Nats have no clear or viable alternative means he's there until he decides to stand down, which I suspect he'll do in about 2027, 28.
Yeah, well, I go back to my position earlier in the year, Ashley, when you and I sort of seemed to agree that he couldn't take it through to the next election. I'm now thinking at 32%, if that's really what National's on, well, Jenny Shipley took National out in 1999 at 33%. 32% you fail. 32% you don't get a second term. You're a one-term loser. At 32%, I can't see them putting it together at 32%. So now these National MPs will be scratching their heads going, shit. They'll start to be concerned year out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? When you look at polls of preferred Prime Minister over the last 10 or 15 or even 20 years, and what's typically happened over my lifetime, and Stuart will probably agree with this, is that when you've looked at the preferred Prime Minister, it has generally been the Prime Minister who's in office, and by quite some margin. Yeah. And so I actually say to people, because the media would make a meal of the fact that the leader of the opposition was always well behind, and I would basically say to people, look, it's almost as if they're being asked who the Prime Minister is because they're so far ahead. But I'll tell you what, his polling at the moment in terms of preferred Prime Minister stakes kind of throw all of that basic logic out the window because he's sort of within margins of error. He's not that far ahead of Hipkins. So I'm concerned about that. Having said that, this is going to surprise you.
They're equal. They're at 24. They're at 24
yeah. Well, depending on which poll. I saw one a few days ago. They had him about 60% ahead. But yes, basically equal. But this is going to surprise you. I've been watching him over the last 6 or 7 weeks, and for me, he's kind of upped his game a little bit. He's used a bit of humour. I mean, there was a big debate about him using the word fricking the other day. But if you look at how he's actually performed, he's starting to look like he's relaxing a little bit. And maybe it's too early to see whether that's going to have an impact because there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of angst on the right amongst people who've decided almost to the point of no return now that he's simply not the right guy for the job.
Yeah.
And
Middle New Zealand thinks that.
Yeah. It's like
Middle New Zealand.
But I was just going to say, it's a bit like the old anybody but Cunliffe philosophy, basically anybody but Luxon.
Yeah, but Dunk, you talk about Shipley and what happened in 1999, but remember the opposition at that point was ferociously competent and had a real plan. At the moment, you've got Labor, which I don't think Labor has released any policy.
No.
So back when it was Shipley, there was a viable alternative. At the moment, there doesn't seem to be a viable alternative. The Greens are doing everything they can to make sure that they're not electable. When the Greens don't talk about the environment and they talk about
finances, tax,
budget, which is just outrageous. It's economic vandalism. So what we are seeing, though, which is surprising me, but we're seeing this around the world, in fact, it shouldn't surprise me, is a disillusionment with the main two parties. Now, we're seeing this in the UK at the moment. I don't know what's going to happen in the States, but this is happening throughout Europe. So, if New Zealand First get this right, and I'm not saying they will, but if they get it right, they could be a 15+% party.
Yeah.
Because people go, the traditional voting patterns where people go, my grandfather voted Labor, my father voted Labor, hell, they hit roll in the grave, so I'll vote Labor no matter what.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think those days pretty much gone for all but about 20% of the population.
I heard someone say the other day that they don't no longer call them the minor parties, call them the conviction parties because they stand for something, and I think that's probably right. At New Zealand First, it's certainly based on conviction. ACT certainly is. The Greens, yes, and Te Pāti Māori. Whether you agree with their conviction or not, but you know what I mean. So you can call them minor. They're actually now 40 to 50% of the vote.
There is a little spoiler in this, and that is in that same Talbot Mills poll, you will have seen that New Zealand First voters are almost equally split on whether or not they would want New Zealand First to go with Labor or National. And Winston will be aware of that, wily old fox. So from his perspective, because if you think about it from Winston's perspective, he would be able to extract in the same way that he did with Jacinda, he would be able to extract more out of a coalition with Labor, I suspect, than he would out of one with National, depending on how the numbers fall at the next election. So it's not quite as straightforward as basically saying, hey, there's 3 blocks on one side and 3 blocks on the other.
Yeah, but actually, keep in mind, Winston is a conviction politician. He has been very, very clear. He will not go into coalition with Hipkins. He hasn't said he'll go into coalition with Labor, but he said Hipkins. So imagine a scenario where after the election, official results, Labor 35, New Zealand First 17, National 30, Act 5. I don't know what that equals. But where there's a chance where it would have to be either National Act or New Zealand First, or New Zealand First and Labor. Labor would have to make a decision around whether they kept Hipkins and not in power, or whether Hipkins stood aside and they brought someone else in, and it was just.
You can't roll on that after the election.
Did you not read that there was a coded message to Labor to basically say, "Hey, look, if you want to do business with me, you need to get rid of Hipkins."
Sack him. Yeah.
Do you think that was coded? I think it was loud and clear. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
But you've got to give it to Labor. You've got to give it to Labor. They have, but what the public hate is infighting and looking all over the show. Labor's kept it together. Whatever Hipkins has done, he's kept it together. He's been almost under the radar in many ways, and he's kept the whole thing tight and looked like you're ready to govern again. They haven't even said sorry.
No, but there's no John Key or even Chris Luxon or Jacinda Ardern in the wings. So, you talk to anyone, say, who's the next leader of Labor? And very, very rarely will you get someone emphatic about who that person is.
Who is it, Stu? Who is it?
I genuinely don't know. I mean, I'm a huge fan. You know this, Duncan. I'm a huge fan of Barbara Edmonds. She says she doesn't want it, but everyone says that.
She's good.
But formidably intelligent and very, very competent and rather pragmatic. But, I'm too far away from the caucus to know if there are.
Well, you're with New Zealand First, aren't you? Aren't you with New Zealand First?
Well, to be honest, mate, I mean, I'm not with anyone. I mean, I haven't had a conversation with anyone, nor has anyone phoned me. But like I said, I live in Napier, right? Along with Ashley, we live in the regions. The party at the moment that is coming out with the pragmatic policies in a way that sort of resonates with people who want to vote, I'm going to say it, is Winston and New Zealand First.
Yeah. Well, look at I've been doing a bit of work on the co-governance stuff, and in Taupo and in the Waikato, co-governance is alive and well, based on agreements that National actually signed back in 2010 and 12, the river settlements, Chris Finlayson, and all this stuff's coming home to roost. And middle New Zealand and towns like yours are starting to get really pissed off because Luxon said to get rid of it. And I reckon there's a bit of that is showing in the polls as well.
The problem with that stuff, of course, is that some of that co-governance stuff was actually fine. Some of it was about sort of, shared stewardship of lakes and things, which I don't think anybody could be particularly concerned about. It's just that it's all got lumped in with this other stuff, which is basically about sort of 50-50 systems and doing away with one man, one vote, which, as you say, is causing enormous angst among people. And again, that, as Stuart was talking before about what happens as you get closer to the election, that's also going to play into people's perceptions of what a government might look like. And that tends to work more against Labor than it does against National.
Totally. What about the economy? I mean, is the economy stupid? It always is. I was told last week that 2,000 people went for one job at New World.
Wow.
Sort of an average job at New World. Now, that's telling. And when you've got 2,000 CVs in, that means that most of them won't even get read. They'll be read by AI and then discarded. That shows how hard it is to get a job, and I reckon that's, at the end of the day, that's what matters. Stu.
Yeah, it does to a large extent. And let's be honest, National came in on the promise to get rid of or to sort out the cost of living crisis.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, rents are beginning to come down, interest rates are down, inflation, well, there might be a slight blip there. So in terms of people paying, exorbitant prices, well, historically for their mortgage, yeah, that's helped it, but the economy isn't roaring back. In 2024, we were having this saying survive until 25 and then thrive. 25 has not proven to be
It's been dreadful.
We all thought it would be. It is tough out there. It really is.
Ashley, your take on the economy?
Oh, so I'm in a slightly different position. When I look at what they're doing, when I look at the fundamentals and the building blocks they're putting in place, I'm actually okay. I'm actually okay with it. I think Willis is doing a reasonable job. I think Bishop's doing a stunning job on infrastructure and stuff that's being put in place there. So in terms of economics and the fundamentals of infrastructure and all that stuff that's important, I'm thinking, it's not going as quickly as they would have hoped. But everything that should be happening basically seems to be slowly coming into place. My issue.
What do you mean by that, actually? Give me a policy that's sort of driving economic growth in a way that wouldn't have happened under a previous government.
Oh, it's the whole suite of things, Stuart. It's the work that's being done around infrastructure. It's the work that's being done with councils around basically getting them back to knitting and away from this whole concept of power of general competence. It's the stuff that Willis is doing around very, very tightly managing the economy in a way which is about saying if you're going to spend extra money, it's got to come from somewhere else. We're not going to borrow it. It's a whole range of little things that in themselves don't appear to be particularly important, but incrementally, when you look at the economy overall, this is classic national economic management.
Yeah, but they're still borrowing. I mean, this is an austerity drive, and they're still borrowing, even though it's austerity.
They would argue, and Stuart will disagree with me on this. I would argue that a lot of that's coming from the fact that it would have been political suicide for them to cut back on some of the stuff that Labor had already put in train. So they've kind of got to do that. Plus, which the economy is growing. So not as quickly as it should be. So overall, as I was just about to say, this is the same kind of stuff.
Is it growing? Where's it growing?
I don't know.
3.1% last year. I think was it the last count, Stu?
Look, if you talk to the people in Napier, it is tough. So, the economy at the moment is doing well because we've got a dairy-led recovery, right? So if you're a dairy farmer, you're doing bloody well. But if you're a high street retail owner or you're anything outside the primary sector, and the primary sector is the backbone of our economy, it has been for a long time, and we celebrate that because our farmers are some of the most innovative businessmen and women in our country. So
they are.
I celebrate that, but it is a farming and more specifically a dairy-led recovery, which doesn't necessarily flow down to the vast majority of people who are still doing it tough in the country.
Well, I just walked through my local shops to jump in my car, and there were 4 guys with their hands out wanting money.
Wow.
4 people in about 30 metres.
Are they all local MPs?
Forgot. No. They were the sausage sizzle across the road. No, but seriously, 4.
The other thing I want to say that we're not really talking about, it'll be interesting to see how the media covers this. You're about to get the Pāti, Māori and Labor beating the shit out of each other in Auckland.
Brilliant.
And these are two parties that want to do that. All National has to do is sit back and watch as you get 2 allies go hell for leather. Now, I'm going to be interested to see here. I mean, Willie Jackson's a mate of mine, but the first thing I would do if I was
don't admit that.
Was Willie, because Willie keeps saying, we love you guys in Te Pāti Mare. Well,
bullshit.
no, you cannot love those guys. But watch this. If they start going really hard against each other, you're going to see those two parties bloody each other in a way that National and Self-First and ACT are going to be, thank goodness, it's a by-election now.
No, it'll be war too, because the history of that seat, which is, Labour feels shafted by Te Pāti Māori, the antics, with the data breach and everything. So this will be, and Labour wants it back.
Yeah, 100%. And Penny's a really good man. Penny has real mana in the Māori community.
Penny's going to win it, isn't he? You'd have to think Penny's going to win it.
If he didn't win it, then something. If he doesn't win it, then Labour's in real trouble. Yeah.
No, they are. I agree. If now you're dead right, because I think the Te Pāti Māori candidate's weak. I don't think it doesn't sound genuine to me. And now I know her. Okay, really, really closely. I know her through the media. I think she will get eaten alive by Henry. He's been around. He's been a minister. They've got a story to tell. Not all Māori are on this activist trail.
No, they're not at all, Duncan. And this is the thing. So Te Pāti Māori say they represent all of Māoridom.
No,
it's not true.
Yeah, of course it's not
true. They don't.
No.
Yeah, and you know what they do? They do the majority of Māori a disservice.
Yeah.
Because often what happens is Māori get lumped in with Te Pāti Māori, but that is not a fair representation of the views of Māoridom.
Yeah. I agree.
As the Greens are not a representation of the views of the vast majority who now believe in the environmental movement.
We had an interesting period of time through the sort of 2008 through 2017 where we had both the Māori Party and Mana, and in those days the Māori Party was very much on the right, and you had this situation that I never thought I'd see in my lifetime, where you basically had a right and a left wing of Māori politics, which I thought was really healthy and that was going to continue. But sadly, it's gone back to sort of tribal alliances and affiliations and what we've got now. So yeah, it's a scary time in that regard.
I saw a video the other day of Taku Teferis, who has got to be the most unlikable of all the Māori MPs. I mean, this guy, he gets my back up. And I saw a video of him. He'd been drinking. He's sitting at home, and he says, "Pākehā, you're not going to tell me what to do ever again." And he's going like this with his throat and everything. I think this guy is a fucking dickhead. Excuse my language. I got nothing else to say about him.
No matter what you thought of Dame Tiriana and Peter Sharples, what they believe is that if you work within the system, you actually do better for your constituents.
Progress.
And they did, Stu. And they did. They achieved change.
Yeah, no, they really did. And I would say the same for the Greens. I mean, Jeanette Fitzsimons and Rod Donald, they were activists who believe you achieve more by working within the system. And sure, James, I think, was the first Green cabinet minister, but the Green Party, for a long period of time, held governments to account for the environmental record.
Insulation program, that came out of the Greens.
Well, mate, as I said, these guys are the Alliance Party in drag. They really are. The Green Party is not an environmental movement anymore, except in name.
So here's a question for you guys. Do the Greens actually want to be in government? Do the Greens really want to be in government? Or is this all theatre, which is designed about protest, which is where most of these guys come from?
I think it's a really good question. I don't know.
I'm with you, actually. I don't know. I don't want to be in government either. I think they are both protest movements, which are ill-suited to government and the responsibilities and the discipline you need if you're part of a government coalition.
You can't have Te Pāti Māori anywhere near the cabinet. I mean, Hipkins is going to have to rule that out at some stage during the election campaign. He's going to have to say they're not going to be cabinet ministers. How can you have those guys in cabinet?
Yeah.
You just can't. In fact, he should rule them out now, because what's happened is slowly the perception is growing that these three parties must be together if there's to be a left alliance. Now, it's like ACT, right? Te Pāti Māori have nowhere to go except with the left. ACT have nowhere to go except with the right. Exactly. Rule them out now. Supplying confidence, that's fine.
Yeah.
But nowhere around the cabinet table.
If they're not going to play by Parliament's rules, you think they're going to be play by Cabinet's very, very, very strict rules? I mean, some guys found it really hard, didn't they? Okay, so I'm just going to go back.
Look at the time.
It's got time to go. Hey, just in one final overview, I reckon if you go into middle New Zealand, doing it hard, I still think the economy has a lot to do with this. They said they'd turn this around. They said it would become, the cost of living would be dealt to. Well, those cost of living issues, they were baked in. Sure, inflation's come back. But if you look at the price of some of these goods, I mean, look at cheese. Look at butter. I mean, when cheese went past $10, Stu, we gave your government so much shit. You remember the block of cheese tax cuts? We ripped into Cullen, we gave them grief. Look at now. They're calling in Fonterra into the beehive. You can't do anything to Fonterra. That's success. That's overseas success. That's foreign markets.
Well, Nicola Willis is ex-Fonterra. How can she say, I'm going to have a talk to the CEO of Fonterra, when she's former Fonterra, for God's sake?
What are they going to do?
I think that was yesterday. It was embarrassing when she went before the press gallery, basically saying that she was going to give them a good talking to, and then came out afterwards meekly like a lamb, saying, "Oh, well, we all understand this is about international."
She should have known that.
Yeah.
That was a bad look, wasn't it? She got that
David Seymour was in the house the last few weeks, schooling Chris Hipkins on. Well, this is actually called success. The further the price goes up, the more we make in New Zealand. It's called export prices. This is a brilliant foreign market, international markets. This is success. You may not know this. I mean, I thought it was naive calling them actually.
And it is success from a macroeconomic perspective.
Of course.
But people who are going out there and can't afford a block of cheese and are now no longer buying butter, they don't care about the international price of milk or the international price of butter.
Means nothing.
All they care about is the costs are going up, and it's bloody hard to make ends meet.
Yeah.
No, it really is. Okay, so if National goes into next year and the polls are showing low 30s, and then you get to the middle of the year and Luxon is behind, there's a series of polls that show them consistently behind. What do you do? Because you can't be a one-term government.
I think if there was any chance they were going to roll Luxon, it's past. If there was any chance that was going to happen, it was 6 or 7 months ago. It's past now. It would look like panic, and they're just not going to do it. So he will be the leader going into the next election. Come hell or high water.
Panic worked for Labor. Panic worked for Labor. Yeah. Panic worked for Labor when they got Jacinda.
Very unusual circumstances. Yeah. Very unusual circumstances. But no, I'm with you, actually, if they were going to do it. But the thing is if there was a clear alternative, like I said, if Nicola was polling at 65 and the others were polling at 8, then I think he would go. But there is not even Nat voters think it's a clear alternative. But I think he will do what Jacinda did, what Key did one term later. He'll win the election. He'll hang out for maybe 1.5 years, and then he'll go and he'll give someone else a term.
Wow, do you? That's an interesting prediction.
Yeah, I don't think he's in it for the long haul. I don't even think he likes it. I don't think he enjoys it. He likes the overseas stuff. But if you're at 32%, okay, Winston gets 9, Nat gets 9, then you're probably home. But you might have to share the prime ministership. It's never been done. Never been done.
If he gets 32%, then either Winston or David or Act will be higher than that. Because the reason Act is doing so well is because Nash is doing so poorly. The reason the Greens are doing so well is because Labor's doing so poorly.
It's always the case. Yep.
If there was a John Key there, then Act would be on 3.
Which, by the way, is why I'm not necessarily taking this Mills poll seriously, because Stu's right. If you look at what's happened over the last few months, or in fact the last couple of years, is that support's been shared around between the right-wing partners, because it's the same people, basically. Not sure where you're
divvying it up. Yeah. I just can't believe the Greens are so high. I mean, for a party that's been abysmal all year, I mean, they couldn't count. I mean, Chloe Sawbrook's interview with Jack Tame was one train wreck in action. Beautiful to see. And they're at 11% or something.
Virtue signalling Remuera and Ponsonby housewives. There's a lot of them.
Have they met them?
But actually, you say that, and that's what used to happen, right? So it used to be like this, and as we all know, you've got to generalise in politics. What would happen is, by and large, it is Remuera and Meadowbank mums. They would go, the household's got the National vote, my husband's voted National, I'm going to vote for Greens. And they would vote for Rod Donald and Jeanette Fitzsimons and that very nice James Shaw. I don't know.
Where do you think it's coming from now?
I think it's sort of the middle hard left who are just so disillusioned with Labor because Labor don't stand for anything. I reckon if Labor came out and said, we're going to do a capital gains tax, the ETS is on the table, etc., and came out with a credible economic plan,
Greens vote would collapse.
It wouldn't collapse, but it would drop as Labor's
soften.
Yeah.
Okay. But what does Labor stand for? As soon as they mention tax, their poll starts to go down, their numbers go down. They don't know what they stand for. They've had 5 goes at capital gains.
Yeah. The opposite of anything National's doing at the moment. That's Labor's plan.
Yeah. Stu, I went to your launch of the capital gains tax at the Wellington Stadium. This would have been, I don't know, 2013, 12, 15, 14? No, it would have been 10.
But what you could do these days, Doug, with the capital gains tax is you could do what John Key did with the tax switch. You could say, we're going to bring in capital gains tax, but with that capital gains tax, we are going to give you a tax break. So it's not quite hypothecated because it's not that clear, but it is a tax switch of sorts. So the vast majority of people would be better off but you don't make it at your marginal tax rate. You make it at something that the rate of GST is 15%, so people don't feel as if it's a real imposition if you sell, your investment property. There are smart ways to do it, but Nicola, we're at a point in time when we need to raise more revenue. Overtaxing labour and having no tax on capital just does not make sense. But
people don't trust Labour on tax. As soon as you mention tax, though, they've stuffed this up before, they've almost lost the argument on this.
I reckon, guys, I reckon most of the country, and I'm including the right on this, would probably wear a proper capital gains tax, which is gains on assets of about 2 to 3%. On sale only, so not an assessed value, on sale only. I think most people would
sale. It has to be sale.
But you say that, but the Greens policy wasn't on sale.
This is a wealth tax.
And theirs is at your marginal tax rate of 33-34%. It was insane. It was absolutely
insane. This was just taking money off people every year for no reason. Where was the money coming from?
Like you say, what's her name? Chloe's daytime interview was just the biggest train wreck of any. But we don't hear about this, but they still love it. That's the bad media going after our wonderful Chloe.
Oh, she was shit. She was woeful. She just said, we're putting it out. She didn't know anything, so she said, well, I'm putting it out there to see what people think and they can come back to us with their ideas. Yeah. Do you know what you stand for? No. Anyway. Anyway, guys, I might leave it there. You've been brilliant as usual. I think it's Bishop. I want you guys to give us a name. If someone was to replace Luxon, I think the most competent and the most ordinary, common, decent sort of approach, the person who's got the ordinary man look and feel about him, it's Bishop. He speaks so normally about things.
I disagree, Duncan. The reason I say that is I take a little bit more notice of education than other portfolios. And the reason for that is, I set up the business case for and ran AUT Southern Campus. I've visited 60 high schools out in South Auckland. I had a poster on my wall for years, a quote from Malcolm X, the American civil rights activist that said, without education, you're not going anywhere in the world. I actually think Erica Stanford is doing a really good job in education. Give credit where credit's due. I worry, she has no economic credibility at all. I think you've got to understand how an economy works. But in terms of competency and driving change, she's
make her the deputy. A Bishop Stanford ticket. One's Wellington, one's Auckland. Bang bang.
So if I'd ever agreed with that, I changed my mind over her incompetence of her handling of the issues around changes to education a couple of months ago. I think there's only 3 contenders within the National Caucus. There's Simeon Brown, Bishop and Willis. Simeon Brown, because I like the guy a lot, I think it would be an outsider. Despite, I used to think Bishop was an idiot. I've changed my view on him enormously.
No, he's good. He's
extraordinarily competent.
He's good.
But for me, the front runner would be Willis.
Yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I still think Nicola's the front runner. There's no doubt.
I disagree. I disagree because I know her from the John Key days, and I think she's acting.
I think she would be the caucus's choice, but I don't think she'd be the people's choice.
And Simeon can't be there until he starts shaving. All right, guys. I'm going to leave it there. Always brilliant. Thank you so much for your time, guys.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.
Okay, that's our political poll. Always good to have those guys on. Always clear and fun and they're knowledgeable. They know so much stuff. I always learn something with those guys, eh? I'll bring you in here. They're good, eh? They're really good at those guys, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, good bunch of guys. Good to chat with.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right, let's do some letters, eh? There's a couple of quickies there, a couple of short ones there.
Yes, sweet as. I got this email. It's a quick one from Mike that just says, NZ's very own Joe Rogan. Glad I found your channel. Keep up the great work. Now, do you see that as a compliment, Duncan?
Well, he gets paid $800,000 an episode.
Really?
Yeah, that's how much he makes. That's how popular the episode. Well, he's the number 1 podcast in the world. So if that's what he's saying, true. I saw this email came in overnight into my email. I was like, "That's a short little email." Is it a compliment? I don't know. I don't. We're not making that sort of money, are we? And there's another letter that came. It's got CC to me from a guy that's been sending a lot of stuff around co-governance. He's written to Simon Watts, the minister.
Yeah, so he CC'd you in this email so that you'd see it as well. It says, Dear Honourable Simon Watts, are you going to please make a stand and stop the ongoing co-governance that continues to be rife here in Taupo and other councils around New Zealand? I say it is time for you and your cabinet members to decide if this swindle can be allowed to continue under your watch. On behalf of many TDC ratepayers, Taupo District Council, Richard.
Yeah, Richard sent a lot of stuff. Yeah, they're angry, and this is bubbling away, in local government and also in the regions, and that's another reason why perhaps he's low in the polls as well. I still think it comes down to jobs and the economy and people not feeling confident in their own country. Okay. I'm tapping out. That's us. Thanks for your feedback, folks, and all your support. Get in touch through our social media channels, Duncan Garner Podcast on TikTok, Instagram. Flick us an email at duncan@rover.nz. Always like your emails. Any ideas, suggestions for coverage? A lot of you are saying get the Prime Minister on, get Winston on. So I might get Winston on next week, actually. Winston and Seymour. I don't know if the PM will come near me. I don't know if he's really that keen. We can always put the request in. Please subscribe. It always helps us stay around, and if we can flick over 30k, that means we would have picked up 25,000 subscribers this year. Thank you to each and every one of you, and we really appreciate it, because that's why we're still here, right? So thank you. To my team, Sir Isaac, thank you, mate. Appreciate it, bro. We'll do it again tomorrow. Remember, life's no dress rehearsal, no curtain raiser, no nothing. This is it. We live in one of the best places on earth. Always remember that. So get out and enjoy it. Have a great rest of the day and evening. Take care, New Zealand. Ta-da.
Editor-in-Chief with Duncan Garner.